2012 New Hampshire, June 24th, Rattle River Trailhead, south to the Kenniscleague Trail. We parked on Route 2 in Gorham and headed south on the AT on the Rattle River Trail and headed toward Mount Moriah. At the start of the trail, it was surprisingly easy along the Rattle River Trail. This was a beautiful section of the trail, and it was a beautiful sunny day with the temperatures in the 70s with no bugs. We reached the Rattle River Shelter, located right on the AT. We continued on the trail and missed an unblazed river crossing and had to spend some time looking to find where the AT crossed the fast-moving river. The trail was getting much harder after we crossed the river as it climbed up more steeply over rocks and boulders. We were pretty much exhausted by the time that we reached the Kenniscleague Trail at around 3 o'clock. We had to turn around here and head back down the trail without making it to Mount Moriah, as we were out of time because we had gotten off to a late start at 9 o'clock this morning. We ate our lunch here and headed back down the steep rocky trail, which was just as difficult as it was climbing up it. Maybe a little more difficult, as it was easy to slip on a rock or a slanted boulder and fall. The trail was really beautiful, as it was mostly in a pine forest. However, it was very difficult with the steep rock climbing and descent. June 25th, Mount Moriah north to the Kenniscleague Trail. Dave had dropped me off on Bangor Street in a residential area at the Carter-Moriah Trailhead in Gorham. He had drove over to the 19-mile Brook Trailhead off of Route 16 with the camper. We are doing a one-night backpacking trip up to Mount Moriah to where we had turned around yesterday, and then we will be heading back down the 19-mile Brook Trail that we had done in July 2008. I waited here with both of our backpacks in this residential area at the trailhead, waiting for Dave, who was taking the AMC bus, which was already 15 minutes late, so that we could start our backpack trip on this section of the trail. I had the key for the truck, so he would not be able to get back into the truck if the bus did not pick him up. We have only one ignition key for the truck, so we have to lock it inside the truck in a secure area so that we do not lose the key when we are hiking. The key never leaves the truck, and we have a spare key that will only unlock the doors. So I was getting a little worried that if for some reason the bus was not picking up from the parking lot that Dave was in, that it was going to be a very long walk for him to reach me. Luckily, the bus did pick him up, and I saw him walking down the street, and we put on our packs and headed out onto the trail. It climbed up as soon as we left the trailhead. We had some great views from some of the ledges going up. However, after we passed the view, the trail climbed up extremely steep for about 4 grueling miles, and we had only hiked up 4 miles in a little over 4 hours on the trail. So we were moving really slow. We thought that we would never reach the top of Mount Moriah before dark at this speed. It was almost 3 o'clock by the time that we had reached the AT. Oh, did I forget to mention that this section was not the AT? Yes, this is extra mileage, also known as bonus mileage, that we have to do to get to the AT. We reached an area with lots of ledges and descended to where we saw a tree with a white blaze. We were finally on the AT. We decided to head north on the trail to reach where we had turned around yesterday from the Rattle River Trail to complete this section of the AT. We descended 1.4 miles to the turnaround point and then returned back up to Mount Moriah. We found a nice spot off the trail to set up camp. It was a great spot near the top of the mountain. We climbed up to the top of the summit of Mount Moriah on a side trail and had a great sunset view from the top. We sat here and cooked our dinner of dehydrated, refried beans. Big mistake. The dinner did not cook very good, and we both ended up with really nasty gas that smelled really bad. We descended back down to our campsite and set up the tent. I did not sleep well last night. Dave was snoring most of the night and had kept me awake. I had to roll him onto his stomach several times during the night. He would mumble that he was not snoring and had just rolled onto his back and started to snore again. Later during the night, I thought I heard the sounds of a wolf walking around the outside of the tent and making huffing noises. Or was it just a dream? I woke up Dave again and told him that something was outside the tent. He went outside the tent and then came back inside and said that he did not see anything and went back to sleep, just like that, and then commenced to snoring again. I hope that his snoring will at least scare any wildlife from coming near the tent. June 26th, Mount Moriah south to Pinkham Notch Road. I had woke up as the sun was just starting to shine on the tent. Dave was still asleep. I got out of the tent and climbed up to the summit to see the sunrise. It was an awesome sight. We packed up at 7 o'clock with no breakfast because we were out of water and there was no streams near us to filter any water. We needed to make it to the Imp campsite to get water, which is about 2 miles from here. We had passed many thru-hikers heading north that had told us that the climb up to North Carter was really bad with some rope climbing. We had also met a section hiker that we had seen on the trail many years ago. He was 70 years old, and this was his last section of the AT that he had to do to finish the entire Appalachian Trail. Later, we met 2 guys coming down from North Carter that said that they had hiked 18 miles a day with no problem and had just left their car at 6 o'clock. They told us that they had made it to Carter Dome, Mount Height, and Middle and North Carter in only 7 hours. It had taken us about 4 hours just to do 2 miles over this terrain. The cliff climbing up to North Carter was the worst that we had seen since we did the Wildcats Range. There are not that many areas of the AT that has this much cliff climbing, vertically straight up. We did not go to the Imp shelter because some other hikers had warned us of the trail and said that the trail to the shelter was a long way off the AT. Later, we saw some other hikers that had told us where the spring for the shelter was. We found the spring that was just a short distance past the trail to the shelter and had filtered some water. We met other thru-hikers at the water source that had a wiffle ball and bat and was hitting the ball down the trail. They told us that they had been carrying the wiffle ball since they left Georgia. They had some strange trail name, something related to the wiffle ball. Later, we passed another backpacker who was only doing the New Hampshire section of the AT. The extremely hard climb up to North Carter Mountain was not worth the climb up, as the view was limited, and a very unpleasant thru-hiker was sitting at the top, and he had made me feel uncomfortable. So we headed down the mountain with no break. We reached the junction of the North Carter Trail and decided to descend down the North Carter Trail. We had planned to go down the 19-mile Brook Trail, but we were still a long way from the trail junction. It was also getting late, and it was going to take us 4 hours to get down to the road from here, and we did not think that we would make it down the trail and down to the road before dark. We had met a strange day hiker at the intersection of the Imp Trail. He was a rather heavy-set man wearing headphones and was covered in sweat. He told us that he did not sleep well last night because of the traffic on Interstate 95 was so terrible that it had upset him. He told us that he had drove up here from Philadelphia. He looked at Dave and told him that he should have lost that pouch before his hike out here. I told him that Dave had told me earlier that he was a lean, mean hiking machine after this hike. He told Dave that he was delusional. He then began to talk to us about politics and said that the world was being ruined by Republicans and grumbled about the tax cuts for the rich as he bounded past us on the trail. Dave then turned to me and whispered to me that he looked like he would have a heart attack out here with the size of his pouch. It was a hard, grueling descent for 4.5 hours on wet, slippery rocks. I twisted my ankle, and Dave slipped on a rock and fell onto his back. We finally reached Route 16, and Dave left his pack with me and walked the road back to get the truck camper. When he picked me up, he told me that as he was walking down the road to pick up the truck, that someone had yelled out, "Asshole," at him. Some people are really rude. We had good weather for this backpack trip, and the temperatures was not too bad. It was a hard, but an overall good backpacking trip.